If I look this good without a lot of exercise, just imagine if I actually tried. It's all in the process. Let's get to it. Welcome. Another episode of IBF On Demand. I'm your jacked, or at least in my mind, jacked host, Eric. You can find me at eric@ibf.org. That's eric@ibf.org. Thanks for the follows and subscribes. Once again, you can always find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on YouTube, or you are listening somewhere. You can definitely find me here. So please think about subscribing, liking, sharing, all of the above. Smash the like button, whatever they say. Just help me out. I want to thank somebody else you want to help out as well. I want to thank Arkiva, driving business transformation by solving what others cannot. Thank you, Arkiva. Wonderful host. Thank you very much. There is some events coming up. We're going to be in Denver, Colorado in August. It's going to be a little bit different. Opposed to the typical boot camps, this one is more of a workshop. It's going to be 2.5 days workshop. Come for 2 days, come for all 2.5 if you want. But it's going to be interactive, supply and demand, with interactive activities and group type of workshop, real live case studies. It's going to be something new we're trying, but it's a great opportunity to learn the fundamentals of demand, supply, how they work together, real life examples, and then how you can actually apply it, but network as well. So check that out, ibf.org, for more information about that. Today we want to explore a structured process, not just tools, drive supply chain excellence, team retention, and sustainable results. I mean, typically it's always people, process, technology. But we always seem to just concentrate on the two bookends, the people and the technology and the systems. I mean, it's understandable, but we don't give nearly enough time to the important part in the middle, the process. In real life, I mean, I work with a lot of systems. I do a lot of consulting for, software companies as well. I work with them. And when they go in talking with organization, one of the main problems they find is there's broken processes, that their system's not going to be able to solve what they think the company thinks they're going to be able to do with it, because they have fundamental process problems. You have to solve the process problems a lot of times before you can have technology enable better processes. One of the main reasons why we see S&OP struggle and fail is because of the process. Lack of vision, strategies not connected. It's process elements. This is the reason why it doesn't work. Everything goes back to process. And when you look at process, one of the things we found, and the next guest is really going to be able to accent, is that good processes will help you keep good people. At the same time, bad processes, and I've seen it, will get rid of good people. So a process is really makes or breaks the people side of things as well. That's the reason why I wanted to focus that and have the next guest on. Yoshika is a senior director of integrated business planning for a fitness company, Xponential Fitness. She has spent her career in planning and operations, most recently at a premium sock brand Stance as a VP of operations. Previously, she's worked with other companies as well, and she has a passion for building foundations, uplifting those around her, and setting an atmosphere of creative thinking. She does have a passion for the field. She was a great speaker at a Scottsdale event and a rising star. Please help me welcome her. So welcome. It's glad to actually see you.
Thank you so much for having me, Eric. I am so honored to be here. I really appreciate you for sort of leading the charge in SNOP and IBP. I feel like I'm with a very famous influencer, so thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Well, I'm excited to see you actually again. So, in Scottsdale is actually see you again. So I feel honored to have you on mine. So we're honored to be here together, and we'll end up doing it again, I'm sure, at another conference going forward. So I'm sure we're going to see each other around, quite a bit going forward.
Mhm.
So what I wanted to talk, you had a great, talk in Scottsdale. We got to talk after that, informally then as well. I liked your passion for the field, and you've actually worked at multiple companies and brands before you came into the position you're at. So where I kind of wanted to start was, what's the one thing that you always kind of see needs fixed, or what's the first thing you start working on in either supply planning, SNOP, when you're coming into a new organization, like pretty much like you're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I would say the first thing that always needs fixing is the process. And I want the folks listening to understand that it's more of an assessment than needs fixing, right? We're going to assess the process to ensure, maybe you have good bones and an existing process, and there's just tweaks that need fixing here and there. So I like to think of it first as an assessment of the process.
I like that because I know too many people that go into it and they just start trying to put their stamp on it and their fingerprints all over the process without listening first. And that's what you're advocating. Like that first 90 days or 60 days, listening is, I think, is what you're advocating coming in.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a phrase out there that says you learn more by listening than speaking. I'm a true believer in that. And so once you come into an organization, I agree with you. We don't want to overhaul the entire thing. And nobody loves when somebody comes in to do that, right? But what we do want to focus on is, what are you doing right? What is working? And then find the things that are not working and just evolve it. And the terms that you use are really important as well, right? If we say, oh, we're going to fix this or do this instead, using words like evolution or assessment or, tweaks here and there makes it seem a little bit less of a big of a change. So I like to approach it in that sense.
So we're not coming in and throwing away everything you've done and revamping everything. You're going to
Exactly.
gentle fixes is what you're
Gentle.
doing.
Yes. We're not going to light anything on fire. Don't worry.
I like dumpster fires every now and then.
Well, supply chain, we're used to that, but yeah,
It is, yeah.
in terms of a process.
Well,
Hmm.
one of the terms that you used, and I think kind of level sets, and I really kind of locked onto in your presentation, was OGSM. So that was an
Yes,
acronym that I took back with. Can you walk the audience through what exactly you mean by the OGSM for supply planning, or what you're talking about is really coming in, listening, and establishing a new process?
absolutely. So OGSM stands for objectives, goals, strategy, and measurement. Anytime we're building anything, whether it's, you're a founder of a business or nonprofit organization, you're volunteering or you have hobbies in your personal life, there's always a purpose there, right? And so your OGSM is kind of the way that you create your philosophy around your purpose. And that's really what drives and leads you. I've heard so many times where people create a process or SNOP and it kind of falters or they just can't get it going. Always go back to your purpose and your OGSM, right? So your objective is, what is the outcome? Like, think about the end in mind first, and what do you want to accomplish, whether it's for the year or in general. What is the highest possible outcome, right? Then you're kind of working your way back to how to get there. So underneath that will be your goal. So as an example, your objective is to create a consensus based plan that all stakeholders align on, right? But what's your goal? Well, my goal is to build a process where there's open communication that's valuable to everyone. And then you keep going down that OGSM. Now we're at SM, which is your strategy and your measurement. So strategy is, okay, how are you going to do that, right? And so I think assessment, where that comes into play, is assessment, is assessing your process, building that process, working with others, and then measurement. How are you measuring against your objective? So I want to implore people to think about, we are always using like objectives and goals and throwing those words out there, but think of it as like, what's your philosophy? Like, what's your purpose in doing what you do?
Yeah, I see so many times they kind of use those words interchangeable and they really can't define the difference between an objective and a goal
Mhm.
and what the strategy and the missions, they all can't seem to mean the same thing. But you're
Right.
actually making a distinction then between them. And it's kind of a pyramid is what I'm seeing. One really driving the next part of the pyramid.
Yeah, and OGSMs, they're not easy to build, right? It's gonna be a process to build your OGSM, and you need to get alignment and feedback from teams and higher ups and things like that, to kind of help guide you. And they can change too, right? Like your objective should stay the same, but overall, your goals and your strategies, they can evolve as well as your business evolves, as your department evolves, things like that. So.
So when you're looking at came into an organization, we said the first thing you look at is the process. You're going to assess the process. You're going to set up some objectives, some goals. What is the
Mhm.
strategy we're going to? Now, there's a purpose behind there too. I know the conversations we had was process really makes or breaks the people. Good processes retain good people. Bad processes sometimes push bad people out. Said that a few times in this podcast now. So with that, how do you think, or why do you think process is essential for people and retention and team engagement? Why is process really the key for people?
I love that question because people need structure. People need to feel like they know what to expect. Think about babies, newborn babies, for example. And if you're, listening and you're a parent, you know this all too well, is you have to put babies on a schedule, right? Nap time, feeding time, play time. All of that structure is continuous and consistent every single day. And that makes for a healthier baby, a baby that sleeps well, that's well fed. And so, in thinking in those terms, people don't thrive off of chaos. And I get that, some folks are, in startup organizations where things are moving really quickly. And so it's always hard to kind of slow down and build that structure. And there's a book out there called Thriving on Chaos, that's not the heart of the book, right? The heart of that book means be able to adapt, which is absolutely 100% true. But as a foundation, we need a process there so that people can have structure. And what structure does is provides people with confidence. Like, hey, I can rely on this thing that happens every single week, every single month. And I have that long range visibility of what's going to come down the pipeline. And then it doesn't feel so uncontrollable when emergencies do happen, when those dumpster fires you were mentioning do happen. They're able to manage it and it's not so scary, right? And so I think that employees and new associates that come into our industry and they see that there is a good process in place, they feel like, oh, I'm confident in the team here that has set up this process, and I feel like I can thrive in this very structured environment. So it's really super important.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned the babies need structure. I have a teenage daughter. She needs structure as well. So
There you go.
it doesn't
It never
end.
ends.
I
It
got
never
news for
ends.
you. It doesn't end. It never ends.
Agree.
And obviously, it doesn't end as far as coming into the workforce as well. I mean, what you were describing, a structured business process, really aligns all functional areas, unified set of assumptions, coordinated decision making, but that structure, the cadence. I mean, you were describing a sales and operations planning process in there. And so maybe this is a leap here from what I heard and what I know and what I've written about. It sounds like SNOP can help with people as far as build better teams, people retention, make people more engaged. It sounds like SNOP can actually solve for some of that then as well.
100%. It's a business function that is quite often missing from an organization, right? And what it does is allows people to feel heard. They feel like, you know, they're contributing, which leads to participation. And so I think that what that does personally to somebody who's in a workplace, it gives them more motivation to stay on and to keep going and to improve it and to follow along in that journey of building the SNOP. I think that it might look different in different organizations, right? Certain
Absolutely.
organizations have some sort of SNOP, IBP, you mentioned this in the book, SIOP, whatever it is, it's an integration of the business units coming together, collaborating, communicating, winning together too, and feeling that joy of winning, right?
Yes. I love that. And that's exactly I mean, it's a structured process. One of the things I always preach about it's the rhythm. I can go into an organization, tell you how good of an SNOP, SIOP, IBP, whatever we call it, how good they are by that rhythm. You feel the heartbeat of the process, that structure you're talking about. It's critical. And I love the way you're relating that to people. I love that aspect of things. So
Yeah.
my next question then, go ahead. You have something to add to
Well,
that.
I was going to say, if you're the host of the process, so like I'm the host of our SNOP process, um, I like to lighten up my meetings, right? I like to make sure that people engage. I like to do make jokes and do like icebreakers and trivia and things like that. So it doesn't have to be all business and serious all the time, but when you do things like that, it becomes more personable and it makes people want to be involved a lot more. And I have people coming up to me like, hey, I'm so sorry, I'm going to miss SNOP. This person's going to, go in my place, but let me know what happens. Like they're excited about it and they're doing a great job, managing and running SNOP, even though I'm the host, right? So that's where we all want to get to eventually.
Okay, so with that, you're the host.
Mhm.
What role does the leadership play in this process of as far as building that culture, building teams, help contributing to the process? What role does leadership play in this?
Oh, a big one, a big one. And I mentioned this at the conference a couple of weeks ago, is that you need an executive sponsor, right? You need the executive leadership team to be 100% on board and supportive of SNOP and IBP. And the way to do that is really, you have to just not only get support, you really need to create an advocate out of them, right? And so the way that you do that is by providing them with like the visibility, the value, and things like that. So when I implemented SNOP and demand planning at my previous role, it started from the top. All of the assessment and the results from that, and the way that we laid out our calendar and meetings and program and content, all of that we presented to the executive team first. Like we had to get their sign in. And what that does is it's going to trickle down into the rest of the organization. And so we really need to create a champion out of them. It's a little bit of an art. Like I'm not good at sales at all. Like, but you have to do a little bit of sales stuff to kind of sell what your purpose is and what you're trying to do. But it definitely always comes from the top. And we have executive SNOP meetings once a month. And every single time they say, this is great. We needed this for so long. We're so grateful. And we're like, okay, yes, tell that to the rest of your teams, individually. So the word's getting out, the more that you create a fan out of them, we'll create fans out of the rest of the organization.
See, I want to be part of your SNOP process as well.
It's fun.
you mentioned you mentioned champion. So something that's near dear to me. I'm an advocate for, and something personal for you then as well. I want to kind of talk about. You've championed women in supply chain, bringing them into roles then as well. How can a structured process, as we're talking about process, how can the type of process, the structure of the process, how can that help create more inclusion or supportive environments than that women would be a fan of and come part of? Because we want more be involved. How do we get them more involved?
Yeah. I think that, as the host of the meeting, you're the facilitator, right? I could take another 15, 20 minutes to talk about meeting etiquette, but
That'd be the
uh,
next podcast.
yeah, um, you know, as the host of an SNOP or IBP process or meeting, you're just the facilitator. You're not responsible for having all of the answers. You need to get everyone to yes, or you need to get everyone to the consensus. And so it's really, really important to make sure that people have a voice and people are being heard. I've been in so many situations where I've been talked over, or um, there's a phrase out there called mansplaining, but it's actually there's
Well,
women's
let me
splaining.
explain you what that means. What they mean by that is
Exactly. Oh, I love that. But it's not just men. Everybody does it. I do it too. And so we need to check our own biases a little bit here. But um, as the host of the meeting, as a facilitator, it's your job to make sure that everyone feels heard. Now, you do have to make sure that you keep the meeting on the rails, right? No, parking lot, certain ideas, and don't let people go off on tangents. But you want to make sure that you clearly are addressing, what needs to be solved for in the meeting, and make sure, hey, what is your opinion on that so and so, right? Like, is this what you meant when you said? Making sure to give space and time to people, everybody, women and men, but also reiterating back, what their ideas were. Um, I think it's really important to do. And so there's a bit of an art there when it comes to the meeting and the process. But I would also encourage, managers and leaders to give associates the opportunity to lead. So yes, I'm the meeting host now, but when I'm hiring for a demand planning manager right now. That was not a request or anything, but I'm hiring for her demand planning manager, but I want that person to build into the SNOP, host at some point. I want them to lead a meeting here and there. And so giving people the opportunity and women the opportunity to shine is super important.
and that structure would help as well because people just women or anybody understanding that roles and responsibilities, you understand how you're fitting into the process. It has that comfort because there's some insecurities coming in. You don't know what you're going to face. You've probably faced some obstacles in the past that you've had to overcome. You're not sure if it's going to happen again. So having that everything above board on the table structure is going to help kind of build that confidence coming into it for women or
Yeah,
anybody actually.
absolutely. And I think, there's a phrase out there, empowered women empower women, which I fully agree with. And I have been using that as kind of my motto in the last couple of years, right? Later on in my career, not to age myself. However, I do want to evolve that phrase just a little bit, because I don't think that you have to wait to a certain point in your career to empower women, right? I think that as women, because we face more challenges than men do in the workplace, and by the way, I'm a huge advocate for not just women in supply chain, but women in the workplace in general. There's a lot of insecurities there, and there's a lot of past experience there, like you mentioned. But what I want to implore everyone to do is, like, hey, we don't have to wait until we're in positions of leadership, whatever that title is, to elevate and empower those around you. You could do it at the beginning of your career, and I know that's hard because you're just starting out. um, you're trying to get to the next level, you're trying to get to the top, you're doing this, you need to do this for yourself, right? But if you do have the capacity, learn to elevate and empower those around you. And that's a really great leadership skill, actually, that you'll be kind of putting on yourself and learning as you grow older. And so instead of saying empowered women empower women, I like to use the phrase women empower women. It's just all across the board, and applies to everyone. And not only that, we do need allyship from men. It's a fact. We just do. And so as you're going into your career, it's not just women that you should be focusing on. You should be focusing on the men around you so that they can become advocates for you as well. And so that's a win-win for me in my eyes. But yeah, I think that it's evolved so differently just in the last couple of years, but it's never too late or never too early to start thinking about those around you as well.
I love that. And by the way, it's not just women. I think men have a role in audience.
Men do
We have a role of empowering people. Empowering
100%.
people to do better is what we have a role to do. So,
Exactly.
all righty. So I have a couple more questions, speed round kind of thing here. But with that, we have, how do we make that culture sticky? How do we really keep that, going? And once you start, how do we get that, the maintain that culture that doesn't start slipping back or getting too comfortable? How do we make it sticky inside of an organization?
Yeah, and I appreciate how tricky that is in different organizations. You might have like a culture that where meetings are, nobody really speaks up, or people talk over each other, or um, there's differences in cultures at every organization for sure, but the only thing that we can control is ourselves, right? And so as a leader, as a host, you have to lead by example, and that is the one thing that you can control. And it doesn't mean, for me, my first and foremost job is to support my team and ensure they're successful. Yes, we need to track to our OGSM, make sure we're good there. But outside of that, I do feel a responsibility to influence and lead those around me as well, whether they're in finance. So, I want to make sure that I'm, open and available and helpful and supportive to all of my partners, all of the leaders in our organization. So leading by example really, really helps, right? And then there's kind of like a bystander idea out there where um, that's what we don't want to be, right? We don't want to be a bystander when we see something that maybe we don't agree with or that we think need to change. Don't be a bystander, right? Don't address it head on in the middle of a meeting or face to face. Do it privately and have critical conversations or crucial conversations with people. That's okay. But just to back up a little bit, I would say to make it sticky is really just to be that change that you want to see in your organization, right? I had a fitness instructor years ago say a phrase to me that stuck with me, and she said, act as if. So act as if, you are in an organization that is focused on continuous improvement and retention and leadership and things like that. And so that's kind of what I try to do as a leader. And I implore other leaders that are listening to do the same. Or you don't have to be a leader in your organization. You can still do that.
Okay, one final question, then wrap things up. So, what is your advice then, or your words of wisdom for that person trying to build their very first process out there? Parting words and thoughts to them.
Okay, I'm going to steal something that I read from your book, but I've actually used this same approach. So, what I want to say to these people is it doesn't have to be perfect at the get go, right? Don't expect it to be perfection. You can start with something small and build upon it, as you grow. The fact that you're even thinking about building an SNOP or an IBP process, the fact that you want to bring your organization together to make better decisions is such a great start, and you should be patting yourself on the back for that alone, right? But as you're building it, don't worry about it being perfect. You want to, think about, I don't know if you mentioned this, like a preliminary or a soft launch of the
Yeah.
process, right? That's okay to do. Um, then start with an assessment, get executive buy-in, and then solidify your OGSM, and then honor your leadership philosophy, whatever that is.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. Time flies when we're having fun. Great conversation. So thank you for being part of this. So we'll have to come back on and talk about meeting etiquette. But I said, I'm sure we're going to we're going to be talking a lot more going forward.
Amazing. I look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, Eric.
People are absolutely important. And to have the person drive the process is critical. That's what she showed there as well. Having a good person, you're going to have great results. Process equals retention. It was a clear process, reducing burnouts. It helps drive better teamwork. It helps people understand their role in the company and what they do. It also needs a rhythm. I said you can go into a company, I can tell you how good of a S&OP by the rhythm. Repetition and consistency create a muscle memory. There's no difference in the process itself and people involved with it. Collaboration is built, not assumed. Ownership sets the stage for good execution. And ultimately, improvement is a loop. Build in hindsight and adapt as conditions change. And the one thing I also want you to get from the day, not only those points, but diverse voices are needed. It's our job to empower. Empower people. Empower people means diverse inputs into this process are essential for better processes. Strong processes create a space for inclusion and where new ideas will flourish. Well, that's a wrap. I'm going to go work out. Maybe. My name is Eric. You can find me at eric@ibf.org. That's eric@ibf.org. Thanks to our sponsor, Arkiva, for driving business transformation by solving what others cannot. Don't forget, come join me actually for my birthday in August. Today's my producer's birthday, by the way, but my birthday's in August, and we're going to be in Denver. So check that out. It's an interactive workshop, supply and demand. All the information you want to find out about is ibf.org. Check out that events, all the other events we got going on as well. But that's the next event that I have coming up that I really want you to be involved on. It's a new way we're doing things, and it's a great opportunity. It's going to be a lot of exciting, and seats are filled up. It's going to be a limited number of people participate. I want you to be one of them. I'd love to hear back from you of other things you want to hear and just feedback you hear from today's podcast as well. And remember, if it's Pilates, yoga, strength training, after workout, whatever you do, don't forget, wash your hands.